it's not. Well, you can't connect to anything that's work related, which is by design.
Awesome. All set there. Yeah, we're just good. So we'll just get started in 5 minutes. And we're all set.
Good. Yeah, I didn't bring my personal one with me, which is much friendlier.
I did bring my laptop, I think. In the recording instructions.
Yeah, I can't. There's only so many threads.
Only so many, yeah, only so many things you can do.
We're gonna get to do.
I don't know. I hope so. I think it's just this month, right?
This month and December.
This month and December also?
Yeah, we got bumped on both of those.
I think we normally don't have one in December anyway.
We do a short one usually.
Or
like,
sometimes a restaurant instead.
Sometimes, yeah, we used to do sometimes like a restaurant or a bar instead. In December. And because December is on, like, it's not the fourth Thursday.
Yeah, we normally do the
third Thursday in November and December. Yeah. So yeah, I think we probably will be back at Qualcomm at some time, but we're sort of at their mercy. We had, like, the AV worked out pretty well, I would say, last month. But Drew was telling me, like, I guess IEEE had a bigger meetup at one of their bigger rooms and had a bunch of AV.
But that was a different system, so where we were at for last month wouldn't have been affected by that. So.
Yeah, true. Where we were last month worked great.
IEEE said?
Oh, they had one last month.
I've been doing
Fred
an
Harris.
meetup at Qualcomm.
Fred Harris spoke.
One of my coworkers just asked me, he's like, "Do you know where IEEE?" And I said, "I don't know."
Different places
I think
around
it's
town.
different places.
Because there's they'll do like a section wide presentation, or there's different special interest groups than IEEE that have meetups in different parts of town regularly.
Well, them do.
Depends on where you can find a space, just like everybody else, right?
Yeah. I went to an IEEE meetup at Qualcomm, but like.
What's IEEE?
Big
Institute of Electrical and Electronic.
Yeah, it's like a standard body. I think like they standardize a lot of hardware-related stuff.
Standards,
So, like,
professional association.
How floating point works is an IEEE standard.
There you go.
IEEE 754.
754. So, any complaints you have about how floating point isn't real math? Talk to them.
Real math. It's
IEEE 802.
It's not precise math. Yeah.
IEEE 802. Nobody uses that, right?
Which is the.
That's ISO.
It's
in
8601. It's in my presentation.
That one I know. That's the only one of those that I can.
Because the library included a parser for that.
I guess that 802. So. 802, everybody. Okay, well, 3 minutes and then we'll get started, I think.
Yeah, one of those sections meets in a restaurant on a monthly basis. They shut down during COVID, but they started back up again. I think they're using the same restaurant. It's got a large dining room area, back room type thing.
Got it. Yeah, I know the Pie Ladies meetup used to be really small, and they used to meet at Eclipse Chocolate, but I don't know where they're meeting. I think they're meeting online. I also think Eclipse online. Isn't really having people. That days.
As restaurant business has transformed, but they seem to like the takeout delivery model quite a bit.
Yeah.
Less dining room work to take care of.
Yeah. I would like to add a 6-pack to my order. Yes, I would like to do that.
And they would deliver it.
And then they would deliver it.
As things should be.
As things should be. That's right.
When I went to the Middle East, we stopped in Frankfurt, that I was always amazed by an event.
Oh yeah,
that's doing it right.
That's doing it right.
No, that might be doing it really wrong too. I don't know.
They have that in Japan.
Yeah, they do. Going back to my childhood, they also have cigarettes in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
I guess I have seen a cigarette
There
vending
was-
machine here
Yeah,
recently,
there was
but it was like
cigarette
in a
vending
bar.
machines here.
Like, you can't have one just like on the street. Anyway, well, I guess we'll get started. So hopefully, yeah. All right. Camera just. All right. I think we'll just get started. Hopefully the audio is coming in good through the microphone. Awesome. So thanks for coming. You're in the right place for San Diego Python. I assume some more people are going to trickle in over the next few minutes. But I have a couple announcements. I'm David, one of the organizers. Firstly, I want to thank Ansir Cowork. That's where we all are. They've been super supportive in having us here on relatively short notice. San Diego Python used to be hosted at Ansir all the time, like legitimately 9 years ago. But they've sort of moved around, we've moved around, but it's cool to be back at Ansir. I did want to mention they have First Friday co-working. So September 1st is the first Friday. First Friday of the month, they're doing free co-working here. So if you want to co-work on the first Friday of the month, September 1st, they're doing it. I don't know if they're going to do this every month, but they're at least doing it next month. So, but only the first Friday of the month. I also want to thank all my co-organizers and Jeremy specifically, who's not here yet, who helps line up all the speakers and make sure we have good talks and everything like that. So always want to thank my co-organizers, thank the venue. I do have a sponsor I'm also going to thank in a little bit. I did want to mention we have a website, sandiegopython.org. It's got our code of conduct, it has links to our YouTube channel, it has links to Discord, all the stuff that you would want to ever know about San Diego Python. You can get to it off of the website. It's short. It's only like 2 pages, so you don't worry, you won't be overwhelmed. I also wanted to mention that we have, or not we, but there are a couple upcoming Python conferences that I figured I would just call out. There was actually happening right now, I think, is PyLatam, like Latin America. It's in Monterrey, Mexico. So that one's happening right now. So if you're here, you're probably not there. But there's a couple. North Bay Python happened since the last meetup. But coming up, we have PyGotham in New York City. I think they're also doing an online one. It's in early October, October 6th and 7th. And then DjangoCon US is in Durham, North Carolina. It's October 16th to 20th. It's not in San Diego this time. Last couple in-person DjangoCons, both last year as well as 2 before the pandemic, were here in San Diego in Mission Valley. So it was really nice. I also want to just mention, and if you're watching the live stream, like, you can be a speaker at one of these meetups. These meetups are kind of like run through speakers. You know, we're always looking for speakers at all skill levels. They're the ones who really make the meetup work. I just show up and babble for a little bit. But if you want to sign up to be a speaker, on the sandiegopython.org website, you can sign up. We have a 100% survival rate. Nobody has ever died while speaking at San Diego Python. And regardless of your skill level, like whether you want to give a talk on something very advanced or very beginner friendly or somewhere in between, that is a great talk. So don't feel like you don't know enough to talk. You know, the attendees are of all skill levels, so we want to get talks at all the skill levels. I did want to mention a sponsor. So JFrog is a sponsor of this meetup, and they are a DevOps platform for continuous releases. So like if you want to host a PyPI inside your company firewall, they have a product that does that and other things as well. But that is a thing. So they also gave a giveaway, which is a PyPortal, an Adafruit PyPortal, and Adafruit randomly threw a couple other things in the bag when they mailed it out to me. So I'm giving those away. This is my last Adafruit PyPortal, and I saved these to go with the last one. So it's a CircuitPython powered display. If you win it, I'm going to fun pressure you into giving a talk on it at a future meetup. I've given away 6 of these, or this will be the 6th one, and nobody has given the talk yet. So I'm still looking for somebody to win it and give the talk. I do. So I have since all my devices are taken up for the live stream, I printed out the winners. So hopefully you RSVP'd on the meetup. The first winner on my list is Mitchell. Is Mitchell here? No Mitchell. All right. Lewis Marshall. Lewis here.
You have to attend in person?
You have to attend in person. Yeah, I'm not.
You're not going to mail something?
Absolutely not. I mailed these out during the pandemic, and it was a bunch of work. I legitimately spent probably $50 in postage. Not doing it. All right. Next person on my list, Nina Gasparo. Who's I think I know Nina. So Partha. Partha here. Boy, we're going down the list. I don't think I've ever gone down the list this far before. David Drew. Run Quan. No. All right.
You don't have to go to meetup.com and register if you know you're going to the physical place. So they may not.
Yeah, I mean, but how do I get the I get the attendee list off of there. So if this will roll over to next month. I have one more winner. It's Thomas A.J. Hall. Is Thomas here? No? All right, I'm rolling this over to next month. We're saving it. All right, no winner this month. Hopefully, if one of those people show up and they see the live stream, I will give it to them. If they show up, though, it's got to show up in person. I guess we'll dive into our first speaker. Christian, do you want to set things up? So the microphone should just pick you up. You don't need to do anything. Okay. And then, yeah. I guess the other thing, if you plug in this HDMI, it shows it on the TV and it shows it on the live stream. So hopefully things just work. And Christian Bromann is going to, that's how you pronounce your last name?
That's right.
All right. And Christian's going to talk to us about how to create interactive runbooks built with Markdown using Runme.
That's right.
I'm going to switch you over to...
We good?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, so as the title says, I'm here to present to you today about Runme. Runme allows you to build interactive runbooks built with Markdown. It basically combines your docs with the best of scripting and pipelining. I don't know. I'm as a software engineer myself. When I go and join new projects, I will have to figure out how things run, right? How things run. So I have to look, depending on what language I use, I have to look into package.json, I have to look into makefile, and I have to understand how I can build, how I can test, and how I can, operate on my code base. And so at Stateful, we thought, well, we are in, the 21st century. Things need to get better. And something that commonly is being used across all ecosystem and, projects is Markdown as a documentation format. But we haven't seen much documentation being written in Markdown. So Runme is a tool that bridges the gap and allows you to write documentation and operate your code base through Markdown. And what Runme essentially is, it's a binary that you can use through VS Code within a notebook terminal. It is a Markdown editor, so you can create your runbooks right within VS Code. It's a CLI runner, so that means the code cells or the scripts that you have written in your Markdown can be discovered through the Runme CLI. And at the heart, there's a shell kernel that basically allows you to parse and understands what is in the Markdown and helps you to run it. And there's some interesting ways you can use it or install it. For one is the CLI, you can use it through, or NPM. We have a VS Code extension, so you go on the marketplace, you search for Runme, and then all your Markdown files become indactable. And then there's the GitHub Actions. And the nice thing about the GitHub Action is once you define a certain operation, like how to test, or once you document how to test your project in a Markdown file, you can now tell your CI/CD, your GitHub Action, to use that Markdown file, and GitHub Action understands how it should test your project. And I show you an example in a minute. One nice thing that you can use Runme for is to get started. There's a link. If you click on it, you can generate a link for every of your GitHub projects. And if you click on it, Runme starts in VS Code. It boots up the project and opens a Markdown file that describes how to get started. In this case, it's a simple JavaScript project, but it works for all languages as well, where you open the Markdown file, you see a notebook presentation that has an integrated terminal. And so instead of executing Python, you can execute shell, you can execute JavaScript to set up your project. So a developer that would join your team can just go on that project and basically click to the runbook and gets up and running quickly. Since we integrated the terminal right into the notebook, we are able to use all kinds of interesting CLI tools. Like I used to use FX when I play around with Kubernetes. And so whenever I do kubectl and introspect the pod, I can use that little tool. If I pipe the YAML file into that tool, right within my notebook, I can inspect the pod and browse through it. We recently launched Runme in the cloud, and what that means is basically every result that you run in your notebook can be shared with your peers. So it's being uploaded, and you can share it secretly, privately with your peers. And we have recently done the migration of DNS records through Terraform, where we shared the results what Terraform would do with our manager, and he approved it. And so it's kind of like a form to share when things went wrong. You don't have to copy out things from your terminal. You can just share a web link, which is much easier. And lastly, since we're very well integrated into VS Code, we can touch on all the great things that VS Code has embedded in the notebook. For instance, you can do a BigQuery and pipe it or have a result coming out as a CSV file or CSV output, and the notebook can present this CSV output in a nice table. So all the notebook features that you're used of are working in Runme as well. You can join our community and you can try it out. You can find us on runme.dev, on Runme on Discord, and on YouTube. I've created a little demo. I will make this thing a little bit bigger. I created a little Flask app, and this application was before written using a Makefile, and I had to figure out, how to deploy things and how to, get up and running quickly. So what you can do instead now with Runme is you have this little link. This actually is injected by a Chrome extension that we have in the marketplace. You can just add it to your Chrome browser. So what this would do is it is a little link that basically opens VS Code, and then VS Code will ask you, okay, can I use Runme to clone the repository? And if you click open, it will clone the exact repository that you visited on GitHub, and opens a Markdown file as a notebook. This is a normal notebook UI, but what's different here is you don't see an IPython notebook, you see a Markdown file. And you can run the commands or the scripts in that notebook interactively. So this little link now has me opened now the project for me. And so as a developer, I go, okay, I go to development MD for further instructions. Opening in a notebook allows me now to set, the project up by just clicking one cell after another. We can actually close this because we have a terminal right in the notebook. So this is a Flask application. It runs through Docker and Docker Compose. So it starts up. I don't really need to understand what's happening in the background. All basically this one would suggest is like go through every step, and then you should be good to go. If anything breaks, I can save what happens here and share it with my peers to ask for its advice. And if everything is set up, I can at the end open my Flask application and it's up and running in my browser. So that's one of the workflows to get up and running in a project quickly. But there's much more you can do with just organizing all your operational code in Markdown files. So you're basically getting an incentive to document how to operate on your in your project without having to write duplicated instruction. So for instance, one thing that I mentioned the GitHub actions. I have one GitHub action here that basically at the end always uses my the names of the cells that I have to set up my project. So the stuff that I just did, it does it in my GitHub action. It installs the dependencies, and then it initiates the database and it runs the test. And if I look into my, in my Markdown file, all these cells have now a name to it. They have a little front matter. And so with that, I can access these cells and can execute them through GitHub action or through a CLI. If I open my CLI here, I can say runme ls, and it gives me all the commands that are located in my Markdown file. So I can explore what is available in which Markdown file, and I get a glimpse of the of the stuff that is being run. One last thing. So we started out only supporting shell, but recently we also included other languages that are basically script based, so that we can add a shebang to and it knows how to get executed. And this is really nice for runbooks that have some sort of so you can switch back and forth between the Markdown view using this little icon on top. But this is nice to have like a mix between shell operations that you can do and other scripts or languages you want to use. For instance, in order to deploy this application, I can call fly.deploy. And when that is done, why not have a little post-deployment test where I use Python to just do a little like request and see if everything works. This application is already deployed. Don't want to walk you through the long deployment process. And then I always, let's say, I want to create a release log, and I want to take all the, Git logs or Git messages that have been posted since the last release, but I want to give them some sort of format. And so for that, I'm a Node JavaScript engineer, so why not you write a little JavaScript that would do that for me? I'm basically calling a shell command within JavaScript that is run within the notebook. So if I run this, it runs through my log files, and it basically groups my commit messages based on the commit types. And then what I get is this output. And so now I can take the input of this output and just use it in my next operation, which is here in the cell when I create a Git tag. So with this little like $__, I can take the result of the last day and use it in my current cell. So if I execute that, since I export something in this line, it will ask me what I want to export. So it can be, in this case, it's a Git tag. So I can say 4.5. Let's say 5.6.7. And it takes the Git tag and shows me the Git tag with the messages I created above. So you can really nicely mix and match different kind of cells that have been written in different kind of languages, and create runbooks that you can use to have a single source of truth for operating your code base. And I think that's about it. I'm at time, so I'm happy to take a question. Yes.
If you're running it in VS Code or some of your other notebook environments, where is the Docker container?
So I mentioned the shell kernel, which is basically a Go binary that you use either by installing the VS Code extension or by doing brew install runme, and that Go binary contains the session. It manages the session for you.
On your local machine.
On your local machine.
So
that's
you
right.
offline.
Yeah, and we have future plans to be able to say, okay, I want to run this cell in a remote machine. So the binary, the runme, will connect to that machine, will run the code inside that machine. So there's some plans that we want to do to not only be able to run locally, but also like in remote machines, so that your user doesn't have to understand how to connect to the machine, just presses play and it works.
Question?
So I'm mostly working Python and PHP, and I don't have a great understanding of a lot of multi-language stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can correlate this to like an IPython, if that's the right correlation to make, and then you can say hey, that's not kind of repeat back to you what I heard and make sure I kind of underheard it in the best corollary. So the workflow you showed us was if you were having a Jupyter notebook and you were doing integrated Markdown documentation and running Python in the cells, but Runbook allows you to do that with a multi-language paradigm because you have the shell in there instead of just the IPython kernel.
Yeah, think about the Python notebook that I showed. Think about this as a front end for Runme. You can use Runme in the CLI, as I mentioned here. You can use Runme within the S code. You don't even need to use this notebook. You can use it as you can write within Markdown file. We have this little cell annotation that allows you to execute there. So a notebook is just one of the front end, one of the way you can run Runme. So if you're on page PHP and you like to use your terminal, you can use Runme within the terminal and leverage the Markdown documentation that you have to run and execute commands.
Gotcha. So how would you if you're going to do something so Python's already available? How do you handle the dependencies in the shell that's running on your local machine? Is there it knows it from whatever your project is, how to make sure you have Nginx installed and HPFDM and stuff like that.
Right. So it knows where your project is located and just runs it from that working directory. Mm-hmm. We have a pretty rudimental implementation of the shebang right now, where we just okay, this code cell has a shell annotation or a Python annotation, and we just take the Python interpreter to run the code. So that does not contain any dependency management or anything just yet. But you could at any time just have a shell script or some shell code that points to a PHP file or something like that to make it executable, or in a way that manages your dependencies.
So it's not even contained. It's actually using your native host.
Yes, that's our first step. We just released the shebang support, but there's some more things like running it to a container or using things like Nux to kind of containerize the thing and make it more.
So if it's attached to your shell, then you're all right. You already have it contained on your machine running from the directory.
Yeah, it should.
Shebang and run your.
Correct. Yeah.
Isn't that the same though as in a Jupyter notebook? You're using the exclamation beginning of your command.
Yeah. Exactly.
To take it into this further, one of the languages you can run is shell. So we'll run it in shell. So it's all dependent.
Yeah, you do pip install.
Yeah, pip install whatever.
Wouldn't it take the dependencies though from whatever run environment you have set up in VS Code for this project? Does it execute in that or probably not actually?
No, basically takes a Python interpreter and runs it from the working directory you are in. So that can be different depending on how your project is being set up.
Probably it probably wouldn't copy side package. You would have to
or
interesting.
You would activate the environment within Runme.
Yes.
That you want to have where you're independent.
That's actually better. To be honest, because if you're doing something like this, you probably don't want to put.
Yeah.
Definitely avoid a lot of copy paste issues that people come across with, right? And again, when you one of the nice things is you can say, okay, I run into a problem, so I press this save button, and that save button now, it saves me all the things that I've been pressed save on, so I can just go on. That is Runme Cloud. Basically, it saves what has been executed before, and so this is a private link. If you have access to the link, you can share it with your colleague, and he understands, or they understand what's going on and can give you help. We did the whole I mentioned DNS migration through this tool.
I just realized the one big advantage will be that it's in Markdown, so that you can actually version control what you're doing.
Exactly. Have Markdown as your only single source of truth for everything.
That way you don't have to worry about Jupyter notebooks.
Yeah. Yes.
So is the run out or?
The binaries run on your computer, so you download it through npm or brew, or when you install the VS Code extension, it comes with that, and it runs on your computer. And yeah, we don't have any plans to run it in the cloud. But as I said, there are some interesting use cases where you can say, you can annotate the cell to be run on a remote machine, and we run the code in the remote machine. That
What about Jupyter notebooks? Though it can embed graphics. Does it do that in your Markdown as well?
Yes, you just, as I mentioned with the CSV example, the same works with images as well. So there, it's hard to come up quickly with an example, but
that's all right. I believe you.
We have a blog post where someone just did some AI on, graphics and AI, what was put out was like a PNG, and we just changed the MIME type, and you get the result, the image is the MIME type.
This is Mac OS, right? Have one for Windows?
Yeah, it works on all. Comes in all distributions, in all flavors.
Your installation process?
So yeah, I can recommend to go on runme.dev and there's an installation.
How do you customize it? Platform.
So the easiest, if you use VS Code, you just install the extension and you have it. If you want to use it through the CLI, you can, we have Scoop for Windows, and you can even directly install it from Go if you have that. If you use Mac, you use Brew or NPM, you can use it through that as well. So there are various of options. If there's something missing, you can just ping us and we can look in making whatever system you're using, making it available there. But Runme in itself is a Go binary, and it can be distributed everywhere.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right. Rachel, you're up next. Rachel Yang is going to talk to us about Intro to NLP with NLPIA2. And so you have HDMI, so you're probably just good. Doesn't matter.
Looks good.
Okay, hello everyone, my name is Rachel. I'm currently an intern at Tangible, and today I'll be presenting an introduction to natural language processing using Python. Yeah.
First, slide in the back. Can you make the text
Oh,
bigger?
okay.
Maybe Control Plus.
Can you see it?
When I was younger, this was less of a challenge.
Is that better? Okay, so in our increasingly digitized and information-heavy society, understanding NLP not only gives you an understanding of the potential NLP holds, but it also kind of gives you, informs yourself on how information is being used nowadays, and it kind of gives you leverage when you're navigating the wealth of information available nowadays in the world and in your daily lives. Okay, so to begin, natural language processing is essentially the effort to process natural languages, such as English, Spanish, Mandarin, into numbers for a computer to understand and process using algorithms. Kind of, yeah. So a crucial part of the NLP pipeline is natural language understanding, or NLU. NLU basically extracts the meaning of words and translates it into a numerical format, or it translates the meaning into a numerical representation, which is usually vectors. Weak points of NLU include like euphemisms, sarcasm, slang, all very human understandable idiomatic language, but for the computer it's harder to detect. One example of a use case for NLU is semantic analysis, so like Amazon reviews, detecting what's the sentiment or emotion in that text or words. And then the flip process of NLU would be NLG, natural language generation, which is basically generating human language text from structured numerical data. So an example of NLG tasks range from synonym substitution to chatbots all the way to song or poetry generation. So next I'll talk about tokenization, which is a very crucial and one of the first steps in an NLP pipeline. So tokenization is basically the process of breaking down a text or any word phrase into individual units, which are the tokens. The tokens are any split up character sequence, usually grouped together by some kind of meaning to make the processing more efficient and meaningful. So a parser is what is used to break up the text into like the tokens. And then I'll name 5 common forms of the tokens. So the first would be bytes, which is essentially one of the smallest. That's ASCII characters. And then the next would be characters, which are multi-byte Unicode characters. And then subwords, just like syllables or common word clusters. And then words, which are the most natural and understandable to us. And then just sentence pieces, so phrases. So some of the top ways to implement a tokenizer into Python would be using Python's built-in split methods, or you can use NLTK's various tokenizers, and then you can also use Spacey, Stanford Core NLP, or Hugging Face BERT tokenizer, or WordPress tokenizer. So I'll go over a few code examples. So this one is showing the python.split method of tokenizing. It's obviously very basic, but basically it uses just splitting any string by where the spaces are. So as you can see in this example string, trust me though, it effectively separates the words, like how we naturally separate them. But one flaw would be for the me, it includes the comma, which could make problems in the future. So that's one flaw. But obviously it's a very basic and easy to use method. The next would be the NLTK tree-based word tokenizer. This one's slightly more advanced by using regular expressions. So as you can see, with the same string, it separates the comma apart from the me. So that might be easier in case you want only the words, and then using more pre-processing, you can just get rid of those punctuation. Yeah, I mean, either way. And then for Spacey, using their small language model, you can see not only is it able to tokenize the sentence into the individual words, but it also can identify the part of speech using the token.pause. So next, I'll go over some text processing techniques for NLP. Basically ways of manipulating the text data to enhance the accuracy of whatever natural language processing you're doing. So a few examples include stop words. So stop words are any common words in any language that appear often but don't necessarily have very meaningful, any meaning behind them. And then case folding is simply just consolidating different capitalizations of the same word into the same meaning. And then stemming is identifying a common stem or root of each word, such as getting is similar to get. They have the same root meaning. And then lemmatization is basically just a more upgraded version of stemming. It goes down to the semantic. So here's a code example of removing stop words. So using requests, we can see the original sentence was included. The words were just as I remember them, but removing the stop words, it reduces down to I remember. So basically removing those unnecessary words can make the any processing you're doing more accurate by identifying the core meaning. And then here's an example of case folding. So instead of having house with a capital H and house with a lowercase h being identified as two different words or tokens, case folding essentially tells the computer that those have the same meaning because a human would automatically detect that. So then there's no interruptions. Here's one case of stemming. So houses with any plural or versions of the same word, they can condense it down into the root word. And then doctors, houses, calls, you make it all singular and then remove any apostrophes, that kind of stuff. And then lastly, here's an example of lemmatization. So a little bit more in depth than stemming. And here from NLTK, you can use better can kind of lemmatize to good since they have the similar inherent meaning. And then the pause indicates the part of speech, which gives the lemmatization a little bit more accuracy. As you can see here, goods, since it's a noun, it only it reduces down to good, which is like a good and a noun. But then when you have adjective, which is kind of not what goods is not an adjective, so it's having a little bit of trouble lemmatizing. So in summary, NLP is definitely no doubt a powerful tool, and by understanding it, you can it will help you understand daily life processes of where information is prevalent in our life, which nowadays is pretty much everywhere, from social media to the news. So it'll help you understand and protect you from any manipulation, where some people are using for social good, but also there's people exploiting it with malicious attacks. So knowledge is power. Thank you. Any questions?
Do you think of any problems when you lematize or casefold, all those pre-processing steps? Do you think of any cases where it might reduce accuracy pipeline?
I mean, in definitely some cases, lemmatization will like reduce the. In some cases, you really want to get the details of every word. So like maybe in a fake news article title, you really want to have like a part of speech, like getting versus get. You want to differentiate that. So in that case, you wouldn't want to take away that detail.
So would some of the false positives maybe be mitigated by having a bigger corpus to work from? So in other words, the bigger the body of work you're working from, the fewer false positives
Yeah,
you're doing?
for sure.
It's all about false positives. She put together a diagram, confusion matrix.
Nice. I look forward to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very well done.
Our next speaker is Drew Arnett, who's going to talk to us about slept using PyParsing to expand simplified note taking. Hopefully this just works.
This works. Here, I'll show my screen and show railroad diagrams. See when we get to
Yeah,
that.
if you want to. I'll see if I can pick
I'll
it
be
up
like,
on the video.
crowd on up, everybody.
Or fiddle with the AV. I have you on.
Let me put in the right password.
Jeremy reminded me a few days ago that I volunteered to do a presentation, so I was a mad dash to get slides ready. Did not think about getting an adapter for the video.
Regulating the speaker.
What's a weekend?
Do we have?
We do not have a signal yet.
Ready to try it?
We have a signal.
Now. The laptop will lock after a couple of minutes. If you see it hit, just
Sure.
Yeah, if he's on and available, great.
He's ready.
Okay. Let's do it then after Drew.
I'm gonna give him another link though, and I'm gonna put up another meetup link. Google Meet link.
Okay, Drew, take it away.
Cool. Yeah, definitely enjoy these Python meetups because all kinds of material, things I'd never do and or hadn't had a use case or looked into, and see all kinds of cool stuff. So presentation, got the wrong title. Should be Slepy, S-L-E-P-Y, but we'll get to that. First letter's wrong. Off to a good start.
Typo for the win.
Maybe maybe natural language processing could help me with my slide decks. So finally had a use case to do to use the PyParsing library, so I thought I'd share that. Those who haven't had a chance to take a look at it. So parsing, I always think about like you get files with the CSV file, all kinds of files you want to parse the content. The simplest thing always is, for beginners writing Python code is to do substring and string, starts with, ends with, split, join, slice notation, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's parsing, but it's dirt simple and not that. You can get some problems you get done real quick with that, and some things just don't fit that. Regular expressions, I always think it was kind of the next thing up. So that's, you can go from a match expression to a dictionary in one function call, kind of like reverse Mad Libs. So that's always fun. And And then PyParsing, you can actually have grammars and get into it there. So and by grammars, talking about like EBNF type of stuff, and what people do in the compiler classes, which I never took, but there's that the Sorcerer book that I did start reading once upon a time, and it's cool stuff. So like Lex and Yak type of stuff that all the comp sci students have had a good chunk of them had to take, I think. So my use case for PyParsing. So there's I do amateur radio, and in that there's a Summits on the Air program, and it's an excuse to play radio or hike or mountain bike or do both of those things. So out there in Minnesota, you might have an antenna. You can see an antenna there in the moonlight. And then you got the operator here, radio down here, and there's the, that must be like a lovely Poway at night, right? This is an evening hike on Iron Mountain with folks from work. And it's just kind of an idea to drag out some radio gear to go make some contacts. So some of the folks do use electronic devices to log and record the contacts, but I'm a big fan of just scribbling it down on a sheet of paper. It's just a little bit easier. So kind of hard to read the scribbles here, but I want to get this into the database, the SOTA database on the website with a web submission form. So I can transcribe that. So I've got the date, my call sign, the name, the reference, the database reference for the mountaintop I was on, my time zone in case I'm going to have timestamps in local time. Then I've got a call sign. So each of the contacts I make, I'm going to put a call sign entry in, at least call sign, timestamp, maybe frequency and mode if that changes. But it's kind of a stateful type of thing. So once I've switched to FM mode, the rest of the contacts will also be FM until I change that again. So I tend to write the timestamps this way because I might hear somebody and I won't be able to work them, but I've already written down their call sign, so I should maybe cross it out. But if I actually do work them, then I'll jot down the time. Kind of a clue to me, so I write the time at the end and do it that way. If I change frequency and mode, I've entered a new frequency on this line, a new mode. Now everything logged after that will have that information. But basically that's to get into this table format for the log update. So my call sign, my mountain, time, date time, UTC and UTC, frequency, mode, their call. And then in this case, I work somebody on another mountaintop, so I want to have their information as well. Someone had come up with a program to do this sort of thing. They call it fast log entry, or FLE. That's his call sign. The prefix will tell you if you recognize airplane tail letters. That's a German station. So this program he wrote supports note-taking formats similar to mine, except the key difference is that the time is recorded in a different manner, which apparently a lot of people do, but I don't do. It's Windows only. It's a GUI program. But it does support different types of radio activities. There's different programs or other things people do. So it's going to support differences in the specific information that's recorded for those. And then there's two standard file formats for these logs that people use in a more general sense than the specific upload that I want to do. And this program happens to output in both of those formats. Somebody came up with another program called FLE, Fast Log Entry, CLI. You guess that's a command line interface version. Belgium, I think. Can't remember his call sign there, but he's got a command line interface version of the program. He wrote it in Go, so it's cross-platform. So the CLI fans like that, but it supports the exact same format that the FLE did. So then this is what my title should have been, SLEPY, so SOTA log entry in Python, and SOTA log entry because I wanted to just do something really custom, just only the SOTA, only not all the other types of things that the FLE program supports. My call sign, so we've got a United States call sign. Wrote in Python. Python's more portable than anything. SOTA specific. I can get even more specific by hard coding my call sign, so then I don't have to enter that anymore. So that once I have my own program, I can customize it any way I want to.
What's SOTA?
Summits on the Air. I'm sorry, did I miss that?
Oh, state of the art.
I got to work on my Summit's on the air. Yeah, so it's a program some folks cooked up in the UK about just over 20 years ago, and it's spread. So it's a niche hobby and a niche hobby and a niche hobby. So there you go. Let's see. I spelled sorcerer correctly once on the slide and incorrectly another time. So again, I need to look into natural language processing clearly. So I wanted to have the output file format so I could upload it in the database with the website entry, and I obviously didn't want to use OpenOffice Calc or Excel or anything to fill out the table. That's just kind of lame. And plus, this is an excuse for me to try PyParsing and see what I can remember from the source, what I did read of the Sorcerer book, since I never actually practiced that stuff. And had PyParsing in my mind for quite a long time as something that might be interesting. So I get to write a grammar. It's written in Python instead of like EBNF format. One cool thing is it can, as of probably a couple of years ago, I have to check again. Now, when you have a grammar, it'll output railroad diagrams. So the book I learned Pascal from had Pascal and railroad diagrams in the back. So a little bit of nostalgia factor there. So one example in this log file format, I've got a timestamp field. So in my case, a timestamp item could be one of several different things here. So it could be Zulu time, or it could be local time, or it could be AM time, or it could be PM time. So what is that more specifically? So it's a 1 to 4 digit integer, a decimal integer, followed with no spaces, and then followed by a Z, an L, an A, or P. So I just thought I'd just use a Z to designate if I'm writing it down in UTC time. So one radio I have has got a clock in it, and so I just keep it at UTC because amateur radio being an international thing, we tend to record our logs in universal time. It's just easier to keep track with everybody. But local time and then AM, or local time could be like a 24-hour format, and then AM and PM would be a 12-hour local format if I'm just using my wristwatch or whatever. So looked into using the PyParsing for this. Sorry, I'm going to look at it. So it took me about maybe 3 hours over a couple of evenings, and I got something working. Horrible code. That's not what I put on GitHub. Had globals and all kinds of nasty. I just had it processed line at a time, but that was pretty much it. So on GitHub, if you look for Sleppy, you can find source code and the railroad diagram. Now, since I didn't have time to get set up for not having the right video, I can have you crowd up. Maybe we can see I'll see if I can make this big enough so you can see the railroad diagram here. But can make it. So I don't know. Can people see that at all? So railroad diagrams like railroad tracks, and they might branch and fork. So the top level grammar is just the SOTA log entry format, and that's got in the railroad diagram here. Well, there's a preamble car followed by a body car, and I can't remember if these are optional or not. This railroad diagram format's not completely unambiguous to read, at least not for me. But so a preamble. What's the preamble? So the preamble can have nothing here because we've got this bypass line route railroad track we could take, or it can have my call sign statement. And apparently in this format, you could loop back and chain several of these cars together. So I could have I could have 0 or 1 or more of these in there. So date, state. So the other thing too is like C, when you'd have things, you just have white space separating things. But you don't care how much or how little white space, just 1 or more white space characters. But otherwise, formatting does not matter at all, unlike Python. So PyParsing by default, if you don't do anything special, will support the tokenization that way. But they do have options in there for some common parsing use cases like HTML. Their examples are good to look through to see some interesting things you can do with PyParsing. There's some actually pretty entertaining examples in their examples folder. But another case they have, I think they have some features to support parsing something where white space is significant, like Python source code itself. But let's see here. Let's find that timestamp here. Let's see. So in my source code, I did do a wrapper for statements, so I could take a grammar and wrap it with a statement to make it into make that grammar into a statement grammar. So that would add this rest of line and line feed stuff to it. I'd have to pull up the source code to look at that. So call sign is just a word. Let's see, W for word. I've got a set of characters that can mean a call sign with no spaces, and then I specifically exclude a period so I won't false match with a frequency. Oh, here's a date statement. So here it's got an ISO. Let's see, what is it? We were talking about this earlier. Oh, not IEEE, ISO 8601 date format. So there is a library with PyParsing for a lot of common things that people might want to have in their grammar. So the dates and I forget what else. People might remember some examples they have in there, but they have a number of things baked in. Like floating point numbers and integers and things like that. So they already have a few portions of a grammar that might be commonly used. Yeah. Anyway, so like that's not big. So soda reference here, it's going to consist of an association followed by a slash, followed by a region, followed by a dash, followed by a summit number, and then down below we can see what each of those is. Trying to be. Anyways, it's on the GitHub page. This railroad diagram, you can take a look at that. But if I prepared a little bit better, I'd have a little bit of code fragments to see. But again, that grammar, you're spelling it out. Pretty much the railroad diagram, you spell it out with just you're doing with Python code instead of that EBNF format. And I found the railroad diagram useful to help kind of look through some of the nuances on the grammar, make sure I had things the way I wanted to. I'm not too strict with this yet. I could refine it further, but there's no need really. Could do fun things like there's actually a list of the valid summit references, so I could grab that and then have error checking in here for transcription errors and things like that as well. So, but I was pretty happy with it, and again, having something custom, and if I want to do something the way I want it instead of the way somebody else wanted, I could certainly could, or other people can take it and modify it. I'll probably at some point, if I get bored, I'll probably do the version with a timestamp that's the way that everybody likes it. Then there's a number of folks who would be interested in using this for sure, because then they could reduce their data entry stuff, because some people really hate typing. Leave out call sign, and you could use the current date if it's not given, and all kinds of things to help simplify that a little bit. So it was entertaining. So any questions?
What's the name of that book again? Sorcerer or
Oh,
Sorcerer?
it's compilers. It's by Aho, Sethi, and Ullman
This is like MIT's compilers book.
from way back when. Yeah.
Is that the one you used, or?
I didn't take that class, but after my electrical engineering program, to build cool stuff, you need hardware and software. So I read a lot of comp sci material after I got out of school to learn some of this other interesting stuff. So I read about.
Did you find a book that was? Is that?
I mean,
would you recommend that MIT book or not?
Like, it's not as easy to read as like Tannenbaum's books, right? So it's slightly more dense than that. But I mean, it's you got the automata and all those things. It's it really covers the theoretical sort of stuff. So if you want to get into more serious comp sci treatment, yeah, I haven't shopped around for other texts treating that material. But it takes a little bit of time to read through it. But it's maybe it's not for everybody, right? So. Like Stallings and Tannenbaum for the networking book a few years back, people said, yeah, go for the Stallings if you want the mathematical treatment, the proofs on the probabilities for all those sorts of things. But folks at the time suggested me Tannenbaum if I just wanted the core information, the core knowledge, not get into the more strict mathematical treatment of why you do your exponential backoffs and things like that. So. But if somebody knows a good has a good reading recommendations on that, I'd be interested in that too. So.
That was my book, maybe 20 years ago. I found it very.
Yeah, I think that's probably what. But yeah, and if you're taking that as one of 5 classes during the semester, it would be even more dense, I think. So. Cool. Thanks for letting me use it.
we have a late addition because we had a late cancellation. So we had a late cancellation and then a late swap in. But we're going to have a remote speaker, which is, we always love getting those. And this is going to be Sebastian Larson, who's going to talk to us about stock prediction with Python.
So this part, how do you want the audio, video? Do you want?
So I have to switch the audio
With the key
over
of the
here.
other resource of it.
Okay.
Because
Are you connected
there was
in?
even a term.
Are you
now
Eric
for
Larson?
If it shows up there, I can see it.
The function call.
Okay.
All right, so I guess I'll start now. So, hi, my name's Sebastian. I'm 13. If you probably can't tell already. So this is my presentation for my internship project for Tangible AI this season. So, also please, if I go fast, I don't know if there's a way for you to tell me, but I do tend to go fast. So, just keep that in mind because I get kind of jittery around this type of stuff. So here we go. So for my project, I chose to learn about time series forecasting. So I chose to work with a stock prediction data set, which is kind of cliche, but it has a lot of good data sets out there for this type of thing. So figured I'd work with it. So here it is, just importing the dependencies, basic stuff. So this loading stock function, it uses Yahoo Finance to load the stock data, and it goes back pretty far, but Yahoo Finance isn't that good. It's public data, so all it can be so good. And it just loads it in, and yeah. So here we go, and it can load in several stocks, but the default is Apple APL, so we'll just load it in right here. And you can see it gets the open, the high, the low, the close, the volume, the dividends, the stock splits, and then there's 2 day columns because of the weird way I process it in. But right here, we can just filter it to just use Apple _close, just for simplicity. So here we just have the close, so just a basic example. So then just adding some features. Date features, I want to find out if the month, day, or year can be used to predict the prices. So the month is just the month of the year, 1 to 12, January, February, March. The day of month is the day in the month, which is 1 to 32, actually, not 31 right there. But they cut months are different sizes, so they cut off at different spots, which is why the year is 4 digits. So I'll just come back there because the month and day of month are one-hot encoded and cyclical, so they're treated as categorical variables. Sorry if I'm going fast right now. And the year is left as continuous numerical value. Sorry, I'm bringing it off of it, but to deal with inflation, because inflation comes up over the years, so thought maybe that might correlate. So here we just add them in. The df.index is datetime, so you can just grab the month with that method right there. Oh wait, I forgot to restart the kernel. So let me restart that actually quickly and clear outputs and just run back to there, because that's going to break it. Sorry, this is really confusing. So I can just run. This is pretty annoying. Okay. So I can just execute the above cells. And then we can load the stocks in. And wait, those all ran already. So then we have the date. Okay, so now here you can see we have the month one-hot encoded, which takes the categorical variable, which could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and just splits it up into columns all the way to 12. And if it is the first month, say in the year, January, it would be true, but it's not. It's not the second, not the third. It's not all the way there, but it is the 8th month, which I can't really recall what that is right now, but that's just how the one-hot encoding works, and it does that for the month and the day of the week. So next we add in the lagging, which is basically just bringing features from previous rows into your current row. As an example, just bringing like yesterday's stock price into today's data, today's row. And the function works by just lagging all features to a certain lag num, and then it returns the lag data frame. It takes the data frame and lags all the features in it. So we can just run that here. And then there's a lot of columns now because it lags it, but it does have the ellipses. I forgot. I don't know what it's. I forgot to set it to not do that. But you can see here it has a lag 1 day of month 23, so it'll bring the day of month from the previous row back, which generally won't change, but sometimes it will. And it will do that for the Apple _close too. But I think we have a problem here because I think I'm gonna have to rerun them all back up to here. So looks like I messed it up again. Okay, this isn't working. Forgot to filter it. Now I have to run that again. I hope it, okay, there, it filtered. Just Apple _close. I'm getting confused here. Okay. So now for validation, to test the model accuracy on a data set that hasn't seen or been trained on. So we do this generally done by splitting the data set into 2 halves, the training and the test set, and it trains on the training set and it gets tested on the test set. So here's the function I use for splitting. It just takes a percentage that should be for the training set. It's a decimal. It just splits it. And then you can just see the X train, X test, X train, X, Y test out just here. And then you can see the X train is this length. So it did split it right. So then just to make this quick, it's just a simple linear regression as the model. And you can just see root mean squared error, which it does overfit a lot. I tried some things for that. I'll go over that later, but it didn't seem to help, which it's a pretty hard problem. But just to plot it over here. This is the plotting data frame, which just parses it to make it work well with Matplotlib. Just have them both right there. And then if we just plot it here, We can bring it into the plots, and you can zoom in a bit, but basically right here, the predictions are blue, and the truth, the real value, is red. And you can see it does overlap a lot because the model's only predicting 1 day in the future, so it's going to get it pretty close. But it actually doesn't do too well. It gets off, if I go back to the root mean squared error, it gets off by 33 cents for the training, which is might not sound bad, but if it's a day in the future, it's kind of hard. It's kind of bad to be off by 33 cents. And $2.5 for training, for test, which is really bad. But if we go and zoom in here, you can kind of see this is just a weird image type exported file. It doesn't have like the interactive plot. It just exports it as like an PNG or something. But you can see here, this is the truth and the prediction. And that's the weird thing. It's predicting slightly lower than the truth over all of them, which is kind of odd because, as Hobbs mentioned, stocks trend upward. But that's how it is. Tried some things to fix it. Maybe it found that that's the optimal solution, I guess. So just to show what I tried, here's a hyperparameter table that I made. It's just exported from WanDB. And then you can just see these generated names and then the model type, but just to summarize it because it's a bit much to look through. So it doesn't include all the runs. I switched the structure around because it was my first time really using WanDB, so I was still figuring it out, and that made some of them kind of invalid with weird features. But I found that adding lags larger than 1 week, only some lags seem to have non-zero coefficients, and I was doing that towards the end, so I didn't actually end up adding those in, even though there were some that helped, which is odd that it only takes some, which is might be the fact that I'm not lagging it far enough, or that it's only predicting 1 day in the future, so it's not really helpful. But date features were also not helpful. Might because there's not enough lags though, like not like hundreds of lags that might be needed. And then I also tried lasso models, which just apply a constraint to the values to reduce overfitting. It's called alpha. I tried a lot, but they just impacted the performance really badly. Didn't really help with overfitting. So yeah, because stock prediction is a really hard problem. If I were to continue this, I'd probably pivot to a different one. But here's some ideas that came up for other features: is adding day of week and adding the year squared, which that might help for like measuring inflation, which would change, especially if there's a lot of data that the value of $1 is going to change a lot. But if I were to keep learning about this, I'd probably switch to like web traffic data or something, because thought about that is it's less competitive and less complicated, I would think. So that's my presentation for the tangible thing. Sorry if I went really fast. It's kind of what I do when I have to give a presentation, but I don't know what to do from here because it's online, so I can't really hear what anybody says. But yeah, that's that. Okay, so Jeremy discorded me a question, I think it was. So when would you use lagging? So let me turn my video back on. Lagging, I forgot to mention, but in the splitting section, lagging is for time series because it matters when you're predicting a stock what previous stock prices were, or else you have no context. And if you're doing something maybe that's not time series, I have the Discord open. So if it was not time series, same with the splitting, you would only use lagging if it's a time series problem, because then the previous rows matter. If it's something like predicting with some random thing that doesn't require context, I can't really think of anything right now on the spot, but you wouldn't need to use logging because all the previous rows would have no correlation to the current row. They'd be a completely separate prediction to handle. So yeah.
If I had $1.
All right. Well, I think we're just good. Should we just wrap it up and we can call it? We'll call it.
Yeah.
The only question about stock picks from Jeremy, no, that wasn't focused on. That was mainly for Ansir's prediction, but.
Good. The remote was good.
Good job, thank you. Let's see.
Yeah. Shall I just do the outro? All right.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the end of the meetup. Thank you for coming. I want to thank again to our speakers and also try to recruit additional speakers for the next month. I also want to thank Ansir, where we all are, and JFrog. I have to be the last person out of the room because I have to lock everything up. And if you are interested, there's no pressure, but I think a few of us will probably head down to O'Brien's after if you're interested in that kind of thing. No pressure either way. Thank you for coming to San Diego Python, and take a look at the meetup for next month because I'm not exactly sure whether we're going to be here or we might be back at Qualcomm. So thanks for coming. Have a good night.
Let's try and
All right.
audio.